85% online as a test market globally to see how it performs. Why did GM do this? There's some key learnings here. See, some people, like the digital people, us, are like, woohoo, validation, our industry works, we told you, we knew it, right? And then there's the other side of people, the people who don't dress in black and aren't tall and bald, who are like, oh, see, GM's a brand in trouble. And that's the thing here. They know they can get the most bang for their buck if they put this money online, and that's why, ha ha ha, harump, and jealous start moving, all that stuff. That's not what happened. If you do your research, what you'll understand is that there was a shift last year in how people purchase cars online. See, prior to a year ago, you would do all your research online and then go to the dealership, right? How many people did that when they bought a car? Has anyone bought a car recently? I'm just curious. Right, we bought a couple cars recently. This was my experience recently, is we decided, my wife and I, that we would buy the car from the person who doesn't lie to us. That's what we were going to do. And so we'd go down to a dealership and talk about the car, and the person we'd ask them a question, and they would lie. We knew this. Why? Because we'd done our research online. The person that we actually went with is the person who, when we asked them a question, said, I'm not sure, that's a great question, let me go look online. I was like, Bob's your uncle, that's the guy I want to work with. This is the guy, right? See, what's happened is they don't even call them test drives anymore. I had lunch with the VP at Ford. They call them confirmation drives now. Because the final purchase decision for a car is happening online now. The only reason people go to dealerships is because they think they can negotiate a better price. If you knew you could negotiate a better price, the survey says you would prefer to buy it entirely online, you'd prefer to avoid the dealership entirely. This is the new world. I'm not making it up, facts as they are. How did this happen? I call this the one-to-many conversation. When we do branding exercises with our clients, we talk about 3 conversations. The first conversation is the internal conversation. What are the values, goals, and beliefs of the brand? How does the brand really speak? Why do people love it? Why do people connect to it? Conversation number 2 is what we call the one-to-one conversation. The test drive, the focus group. So I'll give you an example of how this works. Internal conversation. Harley Davidson, you guys know Harley Davidson sells motorcycles, right? No, they don't. Harley Davidson sells something totally different. They sell freedom and the American way and the open road. They once asked the Harley Davidson executive, how do you define your brand? What is your internal conversation? And this is what he said. What we sell is the ability for a 40-year-old accountant to dress in black leather, ride through small towns, and have people be afraid of them. That's what we sell. One-to-one conversation, right? People get on the motorcycle and test it out in this focus group. And then Harley Davidson understands that people love it, people are connected to it, and then they have to have this one-to-many conversation, the third conversation. They have to tell millions of people. And how do they do that? They advertise, they do PR, they do online, they do TV, they do print, they do events, PR, the whole thing. And that costs a lot of money. It costs a lot of money, which, by the way, is good news. That's why we're employed, right? If it didn't cost a lot of money, we'd be unemployed. The biggest shift that's taken place in our world that nobody seems to acknowledge is that individuals now have an ability to have a one-to-many conversation. If I didn't like a product or service, I wouldn't take a 30-second spot on the Super Bowl. I would look like a lunatic. But in these digital channels, people are doing that. They have the ability to have this one-to-many conversation. And this happened because of the web. It's happening because of technology. It's happening because of the internet. And why is this happening? It's because we're connected, right? We don't have dial-up anymore. We're all connected. It's part of who we are. If I came for a job interview with you, and I said, well, great, you want to hire me? And then I turned to you and said, there's one thing. I don't want an email address, and I'd like to not have a mobile phone. You would think I was a lunatic, and you would not hire me. You'd be like, what do you mean? You want to work for our company and not have an email address? What does that mean? This is part of who we are. Real power. Never before in the history of civilization have you been able to go about your day-to-day lives and truly affect change in the world. And now you can. And I'm sure you've had stories like this. We've had them up in Canada. I know that they've happened in the US where a child gets sick and the family starts a blog. Have you heard of these stories? They sort of share their story with family because they're geographically all over the place. And what they do is they start collecting articles from the newspaper and they create a resource center. And other families that have a kid with the same problem start sharing their stories and their pictures and their videos of the treatment. And next thing you know, they decide they're going to do a little charity event. And they raise a whack load of money for this disease. And next thing you know, the mass media shows up and takes pictures of them and puts them in the newspaper and does a whole bunch of TV interviews with them, yes? And the next thing you know, this family, this one person, is doing more to create awareness and change than any health advisory or government could ever do. Real power. And we all have this. We all have this now. The next cool thing is creating, right? When you don't sit back and go, I would like to create an episode of Seinfeld. I will produce Desperate Housewives, right? We don't do that. But on the web is terrible unless you're creating. And from this creating, we're building these amazing communities. Amazing communities. I mean, there you sit, the screen is totally dark. You can go anywhere you want online. You're building up a nice Dorito stain on your shirt, whatever the case is, right? And you can go anywhere. And I'm like, okay, who likes heavy metal music, public speaking, and digital marketing? And I find freaks out there who are just like me. And we connect, and we have conversations, and we share. And this creates this huge abundance of conversations. These amazing stories. Have you actually gone into a search engine or Technorati, a blog search engine, and typed in your brand and seen what people are saying about your products and services right now? Real conversations. You ever get stuck with an electronics thing? You can't figure out the instruction manual? You go online and you type it, and there are forums of people who are sharing their insights and connecting. This is an unbelievable world we live in. And we call the world 6 pixels of separation. Have you heard of this idea of 6 degrees of separation? Small world theory? That any one person is connected to any other one person in the world through less than 6 degrees? So if I didn't know you, perhaps you would introduce me, and you could introduce me to you, and then you could introduce me over here, and through 3 degrees I would be connected to that person. Those days are over, guys. We live in a world where we're all intrinsically connected now. Right? You ever go on a date, and before you go on the date, you go into your favorite search engine and type in the person's name? Of course you do, right? You Google me like I Google you, right? That's the reality of it, isn't it? And you know what people say? Well, I have nothing there for people to see. Well, then you're a serial killer. How could you have nothing on you? What, you've never done any community work, never had a promotion at work? I mean, these people are, small segment, right? Really, really scary. The other thing we're seeing is the rise of the individual. Because of all this connectedness, because of all these conversations, individuals are now leveraging these free channels and creating crazy huge brands where they have networks of millions of people who are connected to them. And these personal brands, mark my words, are going to change the way corporations have brands. These individuals who are doing this right now, you got people on MySpace and Facebook with millions of friends, are going to change everything we know about marketing going forward. So, we talked earlier about the famous press. The Gutenberg Press. One of the coolest things the Gutenberg Press actually did, beyond creating the advent of the Industrial Revolution, is something that I read in this awesome book by this guy, Clay Shirky. You guys heard of Clay? He's got this book out called Here Comes Everybody. Great book, check it out. Here's what he says. The press actually enabled the individual to finally express themselves. Isn't that true? What a powerful statement. And then a couple of years later, we created the phone, and suddenly we had two-way expression. I could hear what you're thinking, you could hear what this whole crazy thing that was being put out to the world. All marketing and advertising, as it is today, is based off of these two channels. But here's the shift that Clay identified. The web is about this group expression. And all we're doing is putting in all the stuff we used to do in the one or the two-way into this group one. And this is why we are having problems. This is why even banner ads aren't performing so well. This is why click-through rates are going down. We are trying to push traditional stuff online into a channel that isn't a one or two-way, it is a group. Can you follow that? Isn't that a different way of thinking about the web entirely, right? I saw at the beginning you had this thing that flashed up. I don't really speak any Spanish, but I know it said the consumer's in control or something like that. And then I heard the speakers throughout the day say the consumer's in control. I'm probably the only new media guy who will tell you that the consumer's actually not in control.